So 10 ideas to manage ADHD naturally. So these are the things I'm thinking more, this is more like systematic, right? So when I talk about things to manage ADHD naturally, I'm not going to give you like techniques or things you got to do over and over again, because that takes bandwidth. What I pictured when I'm looking at this and researching everything, I'm looking for stuff that you can do, and it's going to like you can set it and forget it in a sense, right? And so you'll know what I mean as I get into it. It's things that you can incorporate or focus on or be intentional about, and then it will sustain you, versus here's this like thing you got to do every time, or this tool to manage your ADHD. So we're talking about more like there's going to be nutritional deficiency. So I'm going to talk about that because we definitely have a pattern of those. Allergies, you'd be blown away at what allergies can do to ADHD. So what we're looking at is we're not going to cure ADHD because it's how our brain is formed. We don't want to cure it. We want to minimize the traits that maybe make our lives harder in this kind of setup, right? In the way our structure is, and nobody's fault. It's just not built for ADHD. So we want to minimize the traits that aren't helpful in this environment that we're in. And then we want to keep all the good traits because we have these amazing traits, right? We don't want to get rid of ADHD. You don't cure it because it's literally a difference in how our brain is structured. You can't cure it. You don't want to cure it. What we are going to do is we are going to minimize some of the traits that might be harder, or things we don't want. So that's one caveat before I get started. The other thing I want to say too is that this is not an it's list. I think medicine is great. I use medicine. There's so much misinformation and stigma out there. For example, it's over 20 studies that show stimulant medication can actually improve the pathways and grow pathways in our brain where some people can get off medication at some point. And that happened to me. I went off of it for a year in my 20s because it actually built a pathway. So it's not everybody, but there's a lot of stigmas out there and people are afraid of meds. And so I just want to do a caveat. Meds are great. If you and your doctor choose that can be super helpful. You want to get on the right ones. So I'll do another call on how to know who to work with, how do you know that you're on the right ones, that kind of stuff. But I just want to throw that out there. So this list is for people that are already on meds and they want to minimize or support and boost the help they're getting from meds. Or it could be somebody who can't be on medication or stimulants for heart issues, or they have a medical problem that prevents them. Or maybe you've had substance abuse history. I have one of my best friends just will not go on stimulants because of her substance abuse. And there are people who go on stimulants who have had substance abuse history, and it's really helpful, and it actually stops cravings because they're not trying to self-medicate and create dopamine. So there's no right or wrong way to do this. It's completely up to what your chemistry is, what your body is, what you want to do. And if you want to choose something besides just meds, this call is for you and this list is for you. So as I said, the first thing I want to talk about is the nutritional deficiencies. This is so big. And a lot of people don't know this. And the other thing that can happen too is that doctors don't necessarily test all of our nutritional deficiencies. You might get vitamin D if you ask for it, or you might get it, but you're not going to get B12. You're not going to get some of what's the other thing? Magnesium, things like that. So you very likely may not get those things, and yet those are historically lower in people with ADHD. So what I'm actually do, I'm going to do a screen share right now, and I want to show you. This is from the ADHD Center in Greenville, and this is where they talk about nutritional deficiencies and what they recommend. So one thing is, and I just want to name this vitamin D. I'm going to put this as number one on the list from what I've learned with vitamin D. We are just across the board low on vitamin D, very low on vitamin D. It's really important for brain function. And we often have to take more than the recommended amount. I mean, obviously get this tested, but you want to get at least over 50 on your levels for vitamin D. If you have lower vitamin D, what it does is it makes it harder to focus, and it can make you really low energy and depressed, which is stuff that we can experience with ADHD. So anytime you get your blood work done, once a year, every 6 months, make sure vitamin D is on there and make sure it's over 50. And if it's not, the thing with vitamin D, when you take a supplement for vitamin D, it's not something that's going to get your levels up in a couple of days or even a couple of weeks. Sometimes it takes 6 months, three to 6 months. To give you an example, my levels were at 30 And I was on, the recommended amount is like 1,000. And this isn't medical advice, right? This is just from my doctors. I was taking the recommended amount is like 1,000 a day, and I was already taking that. I was at 30, and I had to go up to 5,000 for 6 months, and I finally got it over like 60. So it took 6 months, and so I went from 30 to 60, and you could be up to 80 or 90 and be good. So it's just a really, vitamin D is a big one, and you'll also see in some of the literature, not literature, just the stuff online that's not true, where it's like, oh, nutritional deficiencies cause ADHD. No, they don't. No, they don't. Correlation does not mean causation. And there's a lot of studies about this. So our biology is different. That's why we have nutritional deficiencies that are different than, the average person in the population, because our literal biology in our brain is different. And so most of us have lower vitamin D levels. Zinc can help with reducing impulsivity. Magnesium, this is if you have sleep issues. Anybody have sleep issues? Like a lot of us, right? A lot of us can have sleep issues, so magnesium can be really helpful. And there's different types of magnesium as well. For example, like magnesium citrate is a type of magnesium that helps move your bowels. But magnesium glycinate might be more about mood and like calming. So look that up. I'm not an expert on it, but not all magnesium is the same in supplements. So those are ones. Vitamin C is huge for focus. That can be really helpful. That's another one that ADHD Center talked about. And vitamin C, if you are on stimulants, make sure you don't take vitamin C within an hour before or after you take your stimulants, because it actually reduces the effectiveness. So if anyone's ever accidentally taken their stimulants twice, 2 doses on accident, if you take some vitamin C, you can actually calm it down. And I've done that before. Now I have a system. So vitamin C will actually slow down the absorption and the effects of that. A vitamin B12 complex is really helpful as well. And we'll put the link in the notes on here. And I might just, I'm just going to drop this in the chat if you want this. What I did is I took the sheet from the Greenville ADHD Center, and then I took links to some of the ones they recommended. I haven't checked if these are still on Amazon, but you'll at least get an idea of what that looks like. So I'm going to drop this in the chat right now. And this is just the link to this whole document. So again, not medical advice, and this is recommended by the Greenville ADHD Center, who we've had on before. So those are ones that are helpful. And then this fish oil, this one's been really big as well. And you really want to pay attention. And what they've said is to the ratio of the EPA and the DHA. So it's got the ratio of what they recommend here. And this is really helpful for our brain. And it helps, as they say, provide the building blocks for neurotransmitters, so chemical messengers, which we need that, and so I've personally, again, not medical advice, but I personally on this fish oil, I felt like it made a big difference. A good multivitamin, and these are all things that I take, and I feel like it's helped me. So again, everybody's biology is different, but I take magnesium before bed. And then I take my fish oil before bed. You can take it anytime, I think. Again, not a doctor, but look into that. But those are really helpful. So these are some links. And then there's one more thing that isn't on here, I don't think. It might be on another sheet for them. But a lot of us can have some differences in processing folate. And there's something called a methylenfolate. I'm going to butcher it. But let me see. There's like I should have looked this up before. There's like a gene we can have where it's like harder to, so methylphenidate, that's what it is. So it's a dopamine reuptake inhibitor, and it can help with ADHD. And sometimes we can have trouble, and it can be tied to folate as well. And so sometimes we can have difficulties in that or impairment on that. So anyways, I'll do a little bit more research. I forgot to bring that up, but it's something, if you get genetic testing, which you can do for medicine, they can actually test if you have a gene that has trouble absorbing folate. So that's a helpful one too. So sometimes vitamin D, it can cause brain fog. Low levels of vitamin D can cause brain fog. There have also been people with vitamin B12 deficiencies who are actually falsely diagnosed with dementia. So they literally thought they had dementia, right? They're forgetting stuff, brain fog, all this stuff, and then they figure out the B12 levels and they restore them, and they don't have dementia, right? Their personality is restored back, and they made a full recovery. I mean, literally, people thought they had dementia. So in lower vitamin D levels, there are sometimes, and it's not common, but people with low nutritional levels and certain things can actually be misdiagnosed with ADHD or other things. And that doesn't mean it's invalid that you're undiagnosed. There are other things in there, but it's just huge, right? So that's one. So that's number one. I spent a lot of time on that because that's really big. And like I said, we're looking for things that are sustainable that you can take and then just forget versus having all these tools and mental gymnastics. So address your nutritional deficiencies is really important. Okay, so number two, this is really big as well. Check your hormones and thyroid. So hormone imbalances can increase ADHD-like symptoms, and a lot of women, especially because there's just been a terrible job at catching that in older generations, a lot of women actually get diagnosed during menopause because it turns the volume up on the symptoms, and you can't mask anymore. And so you go in for help, and then they finally get caught because you've had to mask and pretend you don't have symptoms your whole life, and now the volume's turned up and you can't stop it. So if you're someone, especially a woman, that says, man, I'm getting older, I feel like my ADHD is getting worse, that for me is a key trigger to say, hey, like, have you had your hormones checked? And that's what other people have taught me to say. So if you are an adult and you feel like your ADHD is getting worse, ADHD is not progressive. It does not get worse. Our cognitive, memory stuff and brain fog, it's very different from a neurochemical and if you look at the biology, it's very different than cognitive decline. So our memory stuff is not from the same root of decline as someone who's actually getting dementia or aging. So just FYI, it's not going to get worse. It's not, ADHD is not progressive. So hormone imbalances, and then thyroid, getting your thyroid checked is important too. So ADHD doesn't get worse with age. You're going to get more tools. It can get worse if you're working through trauma, or you had a significant event, or you're going through stress or things like that. So remember, we can have all or nothing thinking. So it can be that your hormone levels are fine, your nutritional levels are fine, you feel like your ADHD is getting worse. And as a coach now of over 10,000 one-on-one calls, I have a lot of clients that will think things are getting worse and not look at the bigger picture, like, oh, I'm, stressed, and we're moving, or I just lost somebody I loved, or I'm working through therapy and this old trauma work's coming up, or something like that. There can be conditional things where it feels worse, but it doesn't mean it's getting worse. So check your hormones, check your thyroid. So then, speaking of trauma, this is number three. So this is another thing. So again, you can check your hormones, address your nutritional deficiencies. Those are things you can set and forget and just put on to check them once a year. So PTSD and trauma work. So with ADHD, neurodivergence, and autism, if you have that as well, we are more likely to have PTSD. And this is another myth out there. PTSD does not cause ADHD. It doesn't. Again, correlation does not mean causation. So PTSD does not cause ADHD. So why with ADHD are we more likely to have PTSD? Well, it's because of our brain. We have more sensitive, more tuned nervous systems. That's why we're more sensitive to sound, to lights, to textures. We can get overstimulated in certain environments if the music's too loud, if the lights are too bright, if there's too much peopling we have to do. So our brain circuitry, our genetics, and our sensitive nervous systems can actually make us more prone to PTSD. And there's actually a lot of overlap. There's a lot between ADHD and PTSD symptoms. Like, there's a lot of overlap. If you look at a Venn diagram, it's kind of crazy. And so what happens when you do trauma work with a therapist that's like, you feel safe, you want to feel safe, right? What happens is it's not going to get rid of your ADHD, but it could be, if you haven't done that, the volume is turned up on all your ADHD symptoms. So if you feel like your ADHD is unmanageable and you've got unhealed trauma, I want you to know that your ADHD could actually be way more manageable than it is now. And it's not going to be like this forever if you've got layers of trauma, because let's say you didn't have ADHD and you just had trauma, it can cause trouble focusing, brain fog, memory issues, overwhelm, feeling frozen, like feeling paralyzed. You don't want to slow down because when you sit still, you've got the memories and the thoughts. You might have trouble sleeping. So, and our nervous systems can be heightened. And so doing trauma work can actually turn the volume down on a lot of our traits if you have significant trauma. Now, and I've heard this before. So if you're listening and you're like, wait, I have trauma, maybe I don't have ADHD, maybe I just have trauma. I mean, I know I've had some people say that or kind of doubt their thing. Here's what I'll say on these calls in our community, everything, whether you have an ADHD diagnosis or not, like you belong. I just want to say that. You don't have to have ADHD, but be a part of this. This stuff helps everybody. So if for some reason you found out you didn't have ADHD, it doesn't change anything. And some people can have ADHD. It's like a spectrum. You can have really strong traits or you could have mild traits, and maybe your traits aren't strong enough to fit the diagnosis, but it doesn't mean you don't belong. And I really want to say that you know, if you identify with this community and it's helpful, you're never going to lose it. Don't worry about that. I don't, you know, yeah. So I want to throw that out there because I've heard that before. And you know, stuff for ADHD helps executive function stuff. It helps brain fog, memory issues, overwhelm, all that stuff. You also likely could have both. You probably have both. That's probably what it is. So that trauma work, EMDR is something you can do as well. That's a technique. CBT, DBT, there's all kinds of stuff that's really helpful. And then also just one caveat with this, with trauma work, a lot of us tend to dive into stuff and go all in. With trauma work, make sure you don't flood your system. If you're like me, it's like, oh, I've got PTSD, I have trauma because I do have PTSD. It's like, I want to heal this stuff. Let's go. Let me watch videos. Let me go all into it. You can actually flood your system because we can be all or nothing and we can go all in. And so it's not a race, and just gently go in because you want to retrain your nervous system that it's safe. That's the point. And you totally can. I literally cannot even believe where I'm at in life because of the therapist and the things I've done. I couldn't even fathom it with where I've been. I mean, I was dissociating all the time. I got diagnosed with depersonalization, derealization, dissociation, OCD, complex PTSD, ADHD, I have autism. Like, I got a whole collection, and like, life is good, baby. And I want you to know that. And it's over time. It's over time. You're not rushing. You're not flooding your system. You're just thinking, what is flaring up the most? What's the highest priority? And you make a list and you go one at a time, and you just gently do it and have patience, and things can get so much better. It's yeah, walking example here. Okay, so then speaking of our nervous system, nature's really big. So if you can just sit outside, this is number 4. So 20 minutes just sitting outside can improve concentration, and being in nature lights up our brains, and it actually can engage our brains in a different way, and it creates vitamin D, which we're lower in. So if you can get outside, you're going to get vitamin D, you're going to get natural light, and it does something with our brain. Like, there's some kind of synchronicity that can actually calm us. I mean, it makes sense though, right? Like sitting in concrete rooms all day, and then you get out and it's like, this is what actually matters, is being outside. So if you can get 20 minutes a day, even collectively, that's helpful. If you can sit outside for your lunch, or just in the morning, go for a little bit of walk, that can be really helpful. So nature is really helpful. And then number 5 is allergies. So this is probably one of the least known things that I've seen around ADHD and allergies. Allergies can play a huge part in our symptoms, huge. So there's something called mast cell activation syndrome, and there's a high correlation with ADHD. So mast cell activation syndrome, and it's a difference in how we process histamine. And so I'll give you an example because I have it, and it's changed my life to find out. And it's one of the best things I've done for my anxiety. I went off anxiety meds because of it. So what it is, it's not that I had anaphylaxis, whatever. There's certain foods that can be triggers, and the body doesn't process histamine in the same way. So it's like almost an overactive immune system in some ways. So there are foods, like low-level foods, that I thought were anxiety, but the body has a low-level allergic reaction to them. So it's not overt. I don't have rashes that you can, but I didn't have rashes everywhere. It was just this low-level anxiety that was always there, and I couldn't really slow down. And it turns out it's because when you're having food that you have slight reactions to, and I could probably pull up a list if it resonates with you, and it's more likely in fair skin as well, and neurodivergence. Your body is on alert, saying, "Hey, something's wrong. Something's wrong. Something's wrong. Hey, something's wrong," because it's trying to fight this thing that is like you're allergic to, right? It's an invader. That's what the body does. And so mast cell activation syndrome can also be like indigestion. You think it's heartburn, but actually it causes extra inflammation in our gut, which I'll get to gut health in a second as well, because that's another one on the list, but actually cause extra inflammation in our body if we're allergic to something. And so it's really common in a lot of us. It can also be like histamine intolerance. So it's can create. I mean, you can have anaphylaxis. You can also have hives, itching, flushing, swelling, nausea, like constipation, diarrhea, higher heart rate, low blood pressure, high blood pressure. You can have shortness of breath, headaches, brain fog, memory problems, dizziness, anxiety, depression, right? Like all this stuff can also be ADHD traits, or it can turn the volume up on them. And so some of the stuff that could be in this mast cell activation, some of the foods are like fermented or alcohol. So this is actually genetic too. So if you think of like Ireland, let's think like drinking is popular, right? And you think of if you can think of like the red cheeks, like somebody from Ireland that's like drinking, they have red cheeks. So that's and I'm fair skinned. That's actually like histamine intolerance, because those red cheeks, it's inflammation, and it's a slight allergic reaction. It's not high, it's a slight allergic reaction, and so it's something to look into because it is so common for us. The other thing that happens, and I'm going to do a list of. I'll send you guys something. I'll put something on mast cell activation. Actually, this is from the Cleveland Clinic. This is actually pretty good. I'm going to put this in the chat. Yeah, this is huge, guys. This is huge. If you have this and then you treat it, it is one of the best things I've done for my anxiety, for my mental health, for my focus. Because when you're in an allergic reaction, you can't sit still. It's hard, So fermented foods, alcohol, sometimes dairy can be a trigger. There's like tomatoes can be one. If you get a little itchy, it depends on different people. Like for some people, bananas can cause that. Bananas are fine for me. But if I have pizza, pasta sauce, and I'm itchy, I'm just kind of uncomfortable. And then if we have sensory stuff, it turns the volume up as well. So one thing you can do, this is a way you can just test it, is if you try, let's say you have a lot of anxiety and then you take an antihistamine. If you can, go for, not medical advice, you heard the disclaimer, so I'm not going to say it anymore, but like Zyrtec, Allegra, or Claritin, you could try one of those. And if you feel your anxiety or your overstimulus coming down off of one of those, that could be an indication that it's allergic stuff that's happening, low level. You can take Benadryl, but Benadryl it crosses the blood-brain barrier. So ideally, you don't want to take that long term because there are studies that show it can increase the risk of dementia if you use it long term. Like if you're taking it every night to sleep, unless your doctor says yes, you need to do this, then you might look at trying a different one. It just depends. It doesn't mean you're going to get dementia, but it does cross the blood-brain barrier. So I take an antihistamine every single day. I take Zyrtec. Allegra's really good too. Claritin, whatever works for you. And then you can also take there's something you take, I'm trying to think what it's, Zantac. It's a different type of antacid, which is also an antihistamine as well. It's like a different type. So I found my perfect combo. So I have it really strongly. So I'll probably just take those for the rest of my life. And then I avoid certain foods, and it's like, I'm good. So mast cell activation syndrome is interesting. But again, if you're curious, when you get anxiety or something like that, try an antihistamine and just see if you feel a difference. If you feel like, I'm calm, or sleep. I used to have so many sleep troubles because I'd slow down and I'd get itchy before sleep. And now I don't get itchy before sleep because it was that. So yeah, I'm going to just do this because it's interesting. High histamine foods. So I'm going to go over a little bit on our time before the Q&A because this is just helpful. Yeah. Okay, so here are some high histamine foods, right? Some of these might be a trigger, some might not. Chocolate doesn't trigger me, it might trigger you. But processed meats, beans can do that sometimes, canned meat, like fermented food, sauerkraut, peanuts can do that for some people. Citrus fruit. So like, again, some of these like pineapple, tomatoes, and spinach really get me. But I can handle peanut butter sometimes and chocolate, whereas like my friend can't. So you might play with what use alcohol. So if you get anxiety or you get flushed cheeks after you have a drink or a beer or something, you might want to look into it. So yeah, pickled foods. Yeah, so it's really interesting. So for us, what's interesting because they say, oh, and this is the next one is gut health. So this is my next number, and I'm going to tie this in. So gut health is number 6. A lot of the advice out there is saying, um, hey, like for gut health, have fermented foods, have kombucha, have sauerkraut, have kimchi. Well, for me, it makes stuff worse because I have mast cell activation syndromes. Or take a probiotic. Well, there's certain probiotics that actually have stuff that can increase our mast cell activation syndrome. And so if you do have it, you're going to treat gut health a little bit differently, and you're going to have certain strains of probiotics, which I have a specialist who is incredible, and she's so busy. I'm working on getting her on here. But right now I'm a conduit for the things that she says. So, we really, with the gut, we want to watch the inflammation because it slows the healing lining and it can help our mental health. There's just more and more research about our gut being tied to our mental health. And so if we can be on less processed foods, vitamin rich foods, and just things are going to hurt your stomach. A lot of us have more gut issues with neurodivergence, especially if you're on the autism spectrum. It's just part of the biology. And so if you pay attention to foods that hurt your stomach or you're going to have to pay for later, it's probably causing inflammation in your stomach. And so you just want to be intentional. Doesn't mean you can't ever have it, but you might want to say, hey, is it worth it? Yeah, this is great, or you know what, maybe I'll pass on this one, so just knowing that. So, and then one thing I forgot about the allergies before I go to the next one is that allergies release cortisol and endorphins and histamine. Okay, so when we have an allergy, we have, like I said, something's wrong, right? So then it releases cortisol. It does release dopamine, it can, but it releases cortisol and endorphins and histamine. Too much histamine can create brain fog and other memory issues. So this was such a huge point that I missed. So with the histamine intolerance, and this is why I'm like talking about a lot. If you've got inflammation, if you've got excess histamine, you're going to have more brain fog. You're going to have more memory issues. You're going to have more mood issues. It can even create inflammation in the brain. So that's why that's like so big, and there's such a high correlation that's not talked about. So take your allergies seriously. If you're allergic to a dog, if you're a cat, if the weather outside, all that stuff, you might see an uptick in your traits. If you go to a friend's house who has cats and you're allergic like I am, you might do that. And so a lot of times I know for me, when we're masking our traits, we get overstimulated. One of our defense mechanisms growing up is to disconnect from our body, especially if you're high sensory like I am. I pick up on everything. And as an adult, what's going to help you with your ADHD is actually learning to connect with your body more and correlate things and be really aware of what's happening instead of just numbing out or kind of dissociating, which is weird because I know for me, it was a defense mechanism, that a coping skill that helped me a lot in school. You got to sit still forever. I'm going to just disappear in my brain because I'm about to go crazy because you won't let me get up, so it's this weird undoing of this coping skill that did so many amazing things for us, and now it's not as helpful. So gut health is a really big one. Okay, number 7 is movement and exercise. So that's what I did the reel on today on my social media. But 10-20 minutes of any kind of movement per day is drastic improvement in our ADHD symptoms. And traits, because we've got wonderful traits and we've got traits we might want to minimize, right? And so exercises, and I met with a doctor on this, a specialist, it directly targets parts of our brain that are understimulated for ADHD, and it lasts longer than after the exercise is finished. So one of the things it does is it increases blood flow to our prefrontal cortex, and our prefrontal cortex is responsible for a lot of our executive function stuff. And it's really, really important. I'll show you with a prefrontal cortex. I'm just going to do a real quick screen share because I know visuals have been helpful in the past. So it's cognitive functions, right? Like executive functions, our personality, our social behavior, whether we're over or understimulated, our mood, our just everything, like our dopamine regulation. So exercise, any kind of movement, like walk, dance, whatever it is. You don't have to go to the gym and have some crazy routine. You could just move your body. Is going to increase dopamine and norepinephrine. It's going to help you regulate your mood. It's going to help you focus better. You're going to feel happier, your energy, just everything. And then with the prefrontal cortex, sometimes ours can be delayed in developing slightly. Doesn't mean anything bad or we're not as smart. It just delays a little bit. It's really helpful to kind of light that up and bring that in, especially ours. I read, and I read that ours, like the average person without ADHD, it's not fully mature around 25. With ADHD on average, they find that ours is fully developed and mature at 30. So if you felt like there was a little delay or maybe you weren't as mature or whatever, what happened is you were actually more fun for 5 more years. And like after my prefrontal cortex developed, like I know that I could feel the difference, and like I was able to go off in dreamland more. Like I kind of missed it a little bit too, you know. I had fun in a different way, and was like more impulsive and like in a good way, you know, like extreme sports and stuff like that. So this isn't. It's just, you know, our prefrontal cortex. So again, if you feel like there's a delay in doing chores or being more mature, whatever, like, you know, that's not you're not immature. You just have different biology, and you were fun for longer than everybody else was. So exercise is really helpful. Any kind of feedback, it builds confidence too. I know a lot of us, including me, need confidence. You know, I'll take as much as I can get. So that's number 7. Number 8, you can do biofeedback or neurofeedback. So it can actually train the brain and decrease impulsivity. And some people have reported a really huge help. There's some people in our community who have done neurofeedback, and it was really helpful for them. So I haven't personally done it because I need to do a lot of the trauma and stuff like that, and I've got a lot of tools. I think I did it when I was a kid, but not for ADHD. There are people in our community that have had a great benefit from it. So that biofeedback and neurofeedback is really helpful. Okay, so number 9 is sleep. So sleep. Now, we sometimes, like, I think it's like 75% of us roughly have a delayed circadian rhythm. And so if you find yourself getting tired 2 hours later than your partner or your friends or whatever, and then you have more trouble in the mornings, you're normal. It's a delayed circadian rhythm. And it's actually in our biology for a lot of us, not all of us. And it doesn't mean you can't change it. You can shift it. It just takes more effort. You're not going to naturally get tired at 8 p.m. Like some people. You're going to have to be a little bit more intentional to shift your circadian rhythm, which you can. So that's one thing. Now, also, especially if you may be on the autism spectrum, we have a difference in our melatonin. We can have lower levels of melatonin. There are some people in our community, because if you have autism, you have a 70% chance of having ADHD as well. And a lot of people, like, you wouldn't know I have it, right? Like, you wouldn't know. And there's a lot of people that have it that don't know because there's a stigma, or you picture nonverbal or something out there. And really, they're just finding more and more correlation. It's just it's a very fine-tuned nervous system, and there's more to it, obviously. But there's a difference in our biology even more so, and we take in 70% more stimulus than the average person, right? So noises might be 70% louder, light might be 70% brighter, you know, very sensitive nervous systems, and our melatonin can be delayed. There cannot be enough. There's somebody I know in our community that when he was a kid, some nights he wouldn't sleep, and it was okay. It was okay, and his parents would just let him, and he would just quietly play with his toys all night, sometimes 2 nights in a row. And I don't know if he's on here. I'm not going to call him out without permission. But it's okay, because certain things work for us that might not work for someone else. So example, some people, this might be more like level 2 or level 3 autism. So level 1, I would say, is more mild or high functioning. or differently functioning, which is what I have. But level 2 or 3, some spin, right, for stimming, and just will spin and don't get dizzy. Whereas I would get dizzy, but not as dizzy as someone else. But to other people, that would look like, oh, that's harmful, whatever. But again, remember, our biology is literally different. So if you go a night without sleeping and you're still okay, it's okay. So I say all this because when I say sleep, if you have sleep issues, that feels really stressful for some people. It's like, oh, sleep, it's this battle. And so it might just be resting too. That's what I've done. I've had insomnia. There were a couple months where I slept like 1 or 2 hours a night. That was a short stint. But I learned just resting is okay. So sleep is ideal if you can get sleep. If you can't, don't stress out. And that's my caveat when I say sleep. But if you are very, very sleep deprived, there are people who can meet the criteria for ADHD that don't have ADHD because they're so sleep deprived, because it lowers our executive function. And so you might need less sleep than someone else or more. It just depends. You'll know that you have the amount of sleep you need if you're not tired during the day, like falling asleep. We can be tired with ADHD though and have enough sleep. So again, it's individual, but sleep can be really helpful. Sleep and exercise, if you can do that, and just figure out what works for you. That's helpful. And then number 10 is the environment. And this is the thing that can make it helpful. So if you, for example, and this is why I moved my office and I have different lighting, if you get distracted easily and you're in an office and you share a wall and you can hear someone talking through the wall and people keep coming to your door and you can see the window and you see the people in the parking lot and you hear the mower outside and you hear the clock ticking that you have and the fan going, all that, like, you're not giving yourself a good chance, So you want to get noise canceling headphones, or you want to have not the big overhead light, because that can be stimulating as well. You want like a lamp. If your pants are too tight, that can be stimulating as well. It can be too distracting, the stimulus. So this is where I talked about earlier, is we want to start paying attention to our body. What's the stimulus we're picking up? What is overwhelming? What can we remove or do differently, instead of what I think a lot of us has done is like, suck it up because we got to exist in this world. And this is a chance as an adult to go back through and say, well, what do I need to suck it up on, and what can I actually alter to make things easier for me? And look at it more as accommodation or an act of like self-love or self-care versus, oh, why can't I be like everybody else? Why do I need special things or accommodate? No, you're giving yourself the best chance you possibly can at being able to focus by, as they say, building a bunker without distractions. So when you work somewhere without distractions. Turn your phone on silent. Stop looking at it. Don't have notifications up on your computer, and really give yourself the best chance, because otherwise it's not really fair. We have 10 times the amount of thoughts as someone without ADHD, right? 10 times the amount of thoughts. We have lower impulse control, and urgency creates dopamine. So if you allow notifications up, you have 10 times the amount of thoughts, and you have stuff that can pull you away, and you look, right? Because we think, and then you see something else and you have thought, and then lower impulse control. You want to do the thing, you want to check it. We're already checking it before it's too late, because like we have automatic, like we're just going to do it. And it's already too late. So our impulse control, and it might be urgent. So it's dopamine producing. We want to go for it even if it's not important. So being aware of these things without shaming yourself is really, really important. And it's okay to do things differently. It's okay as long as the goal is completed. And if you need to set boundaries, like do it. Setting boundaries is good. There's a meme. I think it's like, I'm done being a people pleaser. If that's okay with you guys, or something like that. So setting boundaries is really helpful and really good for us. And you might set a sign on your office if it's at home, or at the real estate brokerage that you work at, that's like, if you come in here between this time, I'm like focusing on my one thing or whatever. If you come in here between this time and this time, you have to put $5 in the donation jar or something, unless the building's on fire. You can make it funny too, and so there's a lot of stuff you can do. But yeah, give yourself the best chance at not getting distracted, at staying focused, and build a bunker, and make sure you're watching your environment. And remember, we do well with routine and structure, but if we don't have flexibility and it's too rigid, then we're not honoring how our brain works, and we're going to rebel. It's not going to be sustainable. So you might create some structure, but you might have some flex in that structure. And this is my last thing before we go to the Q&A and discussion. But you want to give yourself enough structure. So you might say that you're going to do, let's say, lead generation in the morning for your business. And instead of saying, I have to do this thing, you might say, okay, I need to choose one of three ways to lead gen, and I've got to talk to 5 people. So I can call people, I can send Facebook messages, or I can just go walk the neighborhood. I'm going to choose one, but I'm not going to say, you have to do this, you have to call, you have to use this script. Because if I don't want to do it, there's resistance, I might get paralyzed and not do it at all, and then feel like junk. And then I'm going to beat myself up and create a story about myself and blah, and blah, blah, and now I'm 2 years later and I haven't done lead gen and I feel guilty. Every time somebody says the name lead gen. So don't do that. Like, find a way to do it that isn't painful or isn't resistant, or give yourself options. And then, that can be really helpful. So, okay. So that